I am JoAnne Purcell from Seneca College, and I am promoting the True North Country Comic Podcast.
Welcome to a special edition of the True North Country Comics Podcast, dedicated to promote Canadian comic book creators and supporters. I'm John Swinimer, and it's May 8th, 2021. If you want to drop me a line, you can contact me at john@truenorthcountrycomics.com. These podcasts are published to celebrate the exhibitors of this year's virtual edition of the Toronto Comic Arts Festival. TCAF is an annual event gathering comic book creators from around the world to promote broad and diverse voices towards the betterment of the medium of comics through panels, keynote exclusives, and just basically enjoying the fun of comics. On this episode, I chat with JoAnne Purcell about making comics at Seneca College during TCAF 2021. This podcast is available on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. It's also available on the True North Country Comics channel on YouTube. I invite you to like and subscribe. In her role as program coordinator for Illustration and Art Fundamentals, JoAnne oversees the promotion of the Seneca College School of Arts and Animation program and supports student contributors as part of the ongoing primary sponsorship at TCAF. Seneca College provides the opportunity for students to table their comics at the event while participating in the annual showcase entitled The Pond. And so, without further ado, here's my chat with JoAnne Purcell about making comics at Seneca College during TCAF 2021. So, JoAnne Purcell, thank you very much for taking time to chat with me.
Oh, my pleasure, John. Thanks for agreeing. This is exciting. I have to say this is one of my favorite times of the year because I'm a huge fan of TCAF and I'm just so sad this year, not to be able to just go and be in those crowds. So.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I hear you. Absolutely. I know that, but we'll get out of this and one day we can certainly get back to it. But in the meantime, we have these virtual events and it's one way to enjoy other exhibitors and certainly new books and new creators. And that's what we're going to be talking about here tonight. But before we get started, I want to talk a bit about you. Maybe you could talk about what was your first comic book. Do you remember what was the first comic book that you read?
I was not a big comic book. I probably read Archie. I probably read my brother's Batman. But I used to love going to visit my grandparents in Southern Ontario, and they had the best Sunday funnies. And so I would pull out their pages of their Sunday color comic book pages and just pore over that because they were different than what we got in Toronto. For whatever reason, the maybe it was the Peterborough Examiner insert or the Lindsay insert. Anyway, it was those comic strips, sort of the smaller, maybe not so much the books, but certainly the narratives on a shorter frame, which was kind of probably was best for my attention span.
Well, it certainly is a different medium from what we have today, but certainly was very inspirational. I know a lot of creators have looked to the Sunday Funnies, that sort of thing, Charlie Brown even, to inspire them to create. So, great stuff, that's for sure. So we're here talking about the Toronto Comic Arts Festival. It's a virtual exhibit this year, and I know that Seneca is always there promoting themselves, but I'm wondering if you could talk a bit about your role at Seneca. What do you do there?
Sure. So I'm the program coordinator for Illustration. Just over 10 years ago, in 2010, myself and a colleague, Jim Graves, approached administration and said, we have animation, we have art fundamentals, we really need an illustration program. And so Jim and I wrote the Ministry of Colleges and Universities proposal together and sort of created the illustration program that we wished was available to us. And that was, it was sort of like the wish list, which included a lot of business, how to survive. You go to art school and you learn how to draw and paint, but a lot of the times, you'd graduate and you didn't know how to survive. So we started that program and it's 2 years, so it's a 2-year program. It's different than a lot of the degree programs. And part of we allow the students, or we create these opportunities for the students to specialize in comics or children's books or visual development for game and film or editorial illustration. And so we had this comic specialization that I'll talk a little bit more about. And so, I started going to TCAF probably in, not at the very beginning, but when I, started really sort of immersing myself in this program and really sort of driving it and wanting it to be, on par with a lot of the programs that were longer and had been around a lot for many more years. And so I started going to TCAF, and I wandered around and noticed they didn't have any school promotion. Mm-hmm. And so I saw this, this opportunity, and I started knocking on the door of Chris Butcher and Miles Baker, and after a couple of years of knocking, they were very kind, but they had their own sort of perspective. And then after a while, they said, sure, let's give it a try. And the very first year was kind of cold, like this May, and we were we were in the library, but we were in the front, and it was freezing. But we persisted for the full length of the show. And after that, I think they saw our value. And we got our front row or front table from there on in. So it's probably been about 7 or 8 years, I'm going to guess. And although we're promoting, part of it is promoting Seneca, but the other thing that we've really tried to do is create opportunities for students. So TCAF, as you know, is for established artists and publishers, small press, etc. But we really wanted students who were making these mini comics. They were, some of them were maybe, sort of under 20 pages. But they were making them, and then we wanted to create opportunities for them to showcase to the other visitors and publishers. And so we created this opportunity, and it's been extraordinary. So, we're giving them the space and to actually put their work forward in a way that is they probably wouldn't have had otherwise. So that's kind of what we do. It's kind of this two-pronged. Sure, we promote ourselves, but we're also really excited to get behind our students, and because they're extraordinary emerging artists.
Absolutely, yeah. I remember you had sent over a book called The Pond, and I presume that's the book that you're using to promote various students' work?
That's right. So every year we put together The Pond. We're now at The Pond 4. I think it used to have a different name, and The Pond actually comes from the road that our school is on. It's called the Pond Road. So we just, it's kind of a funny, it's up at York University, so it's Seneca at York. And we started creating it alongside Martha Newbigging, who has been instrumental in developing the comics program at Seneca. So anyway, together we have we put together this with sort of the best of, and each student gets 1 or 2 page spread. And then we work with a graphic design student who pulls it all together, and then we get it printed, usually, and then distribute that at TCAF or Canzine, or other sort of trade shows. But this year, of course, and last year, we've made it. It's a virtual sort of a digital copy. We do have some actual prints. That's it. Yeah, I should. We actually did print them out. I kind of forgot about this. We did print them out, and actually, everyone who purchases something at TCAF this year gets a little insert of our comic.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So, we started that. We did that at Canzine earlier this year, and it was a great success. And I don't know if it adds too much to the postal weight. But anyway, so that's our way of distributing. And there's something really nice about that tangible, being able to feel a comic more than just the digital version.
I believe you. My bookcases behind me would prove that true as well.
Yeah.
So I think I was talking to you before or emailing you before, saying the article I usually do at the beginning of each school year about education in Canada about making comic books is one of the most widely read. So definitely there's a lot of interest in making comic books. So maybe you could just walk me through from a high level, if I wanted to attend Seneca and go through your course, is there one specific course per se, or are there a variety of different things that I would be interested in doing?
I would suspect there'd be a wide variety. I mean, making comics is actually a very complex skill. I mean, it's funny how intuitive it can be, and I suppose it can be complex, but it can also be simple. And a lot of it is driven by the story. But in your first semester, you would learn sort of drawing and painting and perspective and all that. The foundational skills, but then you could study children's books, so understanding things from a child's point of view, or editorial, where you get more critical thinking and iconography. And then you would have there is a specific comic book course, or comics, graphic narratives, or sequential art, or whatever you want to call it. And then in your final semester, you could actually, if you chose to, specialize in comics, and where you would take all of those skills and work with our faculty to develop your own comic that you write and draw and add color if you want, and print digitally or print. You could do offset printing, or you could do. Sometimes we've had screen printed covers or risograph covers, and sort of really make an object of art. We take a lot of pride in the overall presentation as well as the creating of the story.
That's great. Now, I know that Ramon Perez, who I just interviewed the other day from Raid Studio, is doing a panel for comic book makers about productivity and how to be productive, especially in these times that we're going through. So I'm wondering if you talk about more than just art instruction at Seneca.
Yeah, absolutely, we do. So we talk a lot about critical thinking. We talk about creativity and how to get started on your project. Daily comics can be a really great way to tap into, sort of start noticing your own life in a little bit of a different way. Doing narrative diaries while you walk around the street. So different sort of prompts to help you view the world differently and perhaps convert it into comic form. So yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of there's a specific course, creativity and iconography. So sort of noticing those symbols and signs and metaphors that are around us as the way, sort of opening our eyes to how we interpret the world.
Great. Good. Now, I know we're talking about TCAF, and you mentioned you've been there before and other conventions, so I'm wondering, do you have any favorite convention or festival moments that you like to share?
Some best festival moments. Well, I have to say I'm not a comic goer or a comic convention goer other than TCAF, although I have been to various tabling events at conferences, such as, sort of the ICON conference, which is the Illustrators Conference, that takes place in somewhere in the States every year or every 2 years, or at there's a whole sort of sort of burgeoning area of comic scholarship, of which I participate in and have some sort of my own project. In fact, I just recently finished my PhD, and I drew half of it in comics form. So that was so I guess maybe the long answer, and not meaning to self-promote there, but the long answer is I just love meeting other creators, and I don't know that it, like that, at Canzine or at TCAF, and meeting the artists themselves and having those discussions about how did you get to this place that you're at, showing your work? And often what I love about comics is that it's so often personal, that the work really comes from a place from within that, has been percolating for days or weeks or months or years. And they've put it down and put it into book form. And, so there's my long answer there. I mean, I could probably start name dropping and saying, I loved having this conversation with an artist or that. But I think it's in general having those really vibrant conversations with artists.
Great. Good stuff. Well, JoAnne, those are all the questions I have for you, but I'm wondering if there's something I didn't ask that you'd like to get across in this interview.
Maybe if I could say one more thing about the faculty that I work with are probably the most dedicated group of faculty that I've ever worked with. And I'm also, with a big shout out to Miles Baker and Chris Butcher, who have always been, once we got past figuring out how we could help each other, we've worked together so beautifully over the years that, I'm just happy to continue sort of working with them and supporting them.
Thanks to JoAnne for the chat. You can discover more about the program at Seneca College by visiting senecaillustration.ca and senecacollege.ca/create. And thanks to you for listening to the True North Country Comics podcast. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to and like this podcast on Apple Podcasts. And please leave a good rating. Also check out the TrueNorthCountryComics.com website and follow along on Twitter at True North Comics. True North Country Comics is now on YouTube. Please like and subscribe to that video channel. Please send your feedback to John at TrueNorthCountryComics.com. Thanks again for listening, and come back soon for another episode. Bye for now. True North Country Comics Podcast is copyright True North Country Comics, copyright 2021.